I have a very small and very beige bathroom. And while I can't make it bigger, I can certainly make it much more exciting. The general style of my house is considered Art Deco, so I'm going to be mixing vintage and modern styles to create a showpiece right off of my entry. Something that honors the old style while not being limited to exact reproduction. The biggest challenge is going to be that it's only about a meter in each direction, 40 by 40 inches roughly, but this will be the first ever official room done in the house, and that is very satisfying. I'm sure this space has undergone a few minor transformations in its lifetime, but what I'm dealing with is roughly from around 2004 and a mix of old and new, though definitely not updated with the historic style of the home in mind. The floor is large travertine tile, way too big for this space, and full of pits impossible to clean. While the walls are beige, they were bright yellow when the house first went up for sale. The sink does technically fit in the space, but it's a tight squeeze and very uninspiring. Same goes for the toilet, though I don't think I'll be able to manage an inspiring toilet. As for the older parts, the mirror is from the 1960s, which is when the first round of renovations happened in the house, and it's just hung on a hook. I'm pretty certain the towel bar came out of the bathroom upstairs. There are filled holes the same distance in the shower tiles. Woodwork is, of course, original, but pretty rotted in the back wall, and desperately dirty. And the light, which I had already replaced, was previously connected to a switch with an external wire. Covered, but very clunky. It used to be a pull switch light, and then that was the way to connect without actually opening up the wall. The one I had installed has an RFID chip and switch instead, but I do need to problem solve making that look a little bit better. It's literally hanging in a plastic baggie on my wall right now. The light I had installed is meant to be an Art Deco style from Rejuvenation that I've moved from house to house over the last decade or so. But that was the only thing I already had for this space. So I started my planning by looking at bathrooms from the 1920s. While there certainly are some plainer examples, I found myself drawn to the more vibrant and crisp designs. Of course, many of those are tiled up the wall, which isn't happening given the budget and the fact that it's really not needed here. But that does mean that many examples have a great use of one color below and either another on top or a wallpaper. Two or three major colors, and often black, are accented around what is still a fairly small space. Definitely a chance to choose a bold scheme and not be afraid of contrasting pops of color. Everything from the trim to the toilet is part of the group. It's honestly amazing how much our modern bathrooms don't look like this. Finding any of the materials for this project is going to be a challenge, but I am going for bold and modern, true to the Art Deco concepts that I love. And speaking of, I'm so excited to introduce the sponsor for this video, June's Journey. Because if you love the Art Deco era as much as I do, you can build a whole town of it and solve some mysteries that are way more fun than trying to figure out what I can actually fit in this tiny bathroom. June's Journey is a hidden object game that follows our clever sleuth, June Parker, in solving the mystery of her sister's murder and uncovering the family secrets. All set in the world of the Roaring Twenties and beautifully illustrated to capture the vibrancy of the era. As you discover clues in each new place, the story unfolds, revealing mysterious characters, shocking secrets, and adventure. Each scene is another room just bursting with design, full of 1920s decor, fashion, and objects dotted about. On top of all of this, you get to build up the island with gardens, houses, shops, and more. While I particularly love the greenhouses, the shops have such a lovely range of architecture as well. I've found it perfect to pick up for a few minutes here and there throughout the day to take a break from all of the work. It's so satisfying to complete the scenes and extra challenges, all within the lovely Art Deco world. Please download from the link in the description or by scanning my QR code. And thanks again to June's Journey for sponsoring this video. Now, in starting this project, wallpaper actually became my main inspiration. I had ordered tons of samples for various rooms, and this floral from Bradbury and Bradbury stood out to me. It's completely impractical in a full room for this house. The black background would be way too much for most of my spaces. The bathroom is, yes, obviously small, but also has a rail of trim around the halfway point. It's easy to just wallpaper the top half only, which gave me a style and a color theme to work from. From there, I had to sort out the more difficult options. The sink came first because there's so little space for it. Toilets only come so narrow, so I assumed I would be getting more space than the previous sink had, which basically returned results of exactly what was in there already, with very little variation. Not many brands offer options outside of white, beige, and occasionally black either. The algorithm did bless me with advertisements from Concrete though. They do modern concrete sinks in tons of colors, which is what my ideal was, with the metal consoles like many older sinks. It's sort of a combination of older proportions with modern materials, and some of their styles are small. The one that would have fit the best required a wall-mounted faucet, which was way outside of what I wanted to budget and plan for. The smallest that had a built-in faucet space is the Hampton. After ordering a bunch of samples and dropping and breaking one, I just kept coming back to the pistachio green. I did keep mustard and tangerine in the mix until the final design step, as you'll see. The faucet turned out to be way more difficult than I expected to find, and I even ordered a brass faucet that was coming directly from Turkey, though that ended up taking a very long time, only just arrived, and I had given up way before it finally appeared. What I settled on was the Alita collection from Signature Hardware, which was actually what was on the list for my full bath remodel, so it was recommended to me. The difficulty of all of this was in the fact that I needed a single mount faucet, no separate handles, and it needed to still feel like it had some of the 1920s elements. Turns out I kind of hate nearly all faucets on the market today, so that was fun. Lots of them are just tubes attached to tubes. The toilet ended up being the least exciting option, because even though Kohler does make two colorful toilet options, there are almost no others on the market, neither was going to fit in the space physically, and being able to actually use the toilet came first. But I was able to find a way to incorporate white in elsewhere to make it not stand out too much. It all came down to the tiles and the paint variations. This got to be so much of a decision. I did a digital mock-up of the space, so that way I could keep swapping that out. I tried a few different colors on the walls and on the tiles, different patterns, though I did quickly find that both the yellow and the orange pulled directly from the wallpaper was just too much to do for the entire space in most versions. Instead, that pistachio green, which isn't technically in the wallpaper but coordinates well with it, was available in paint, sink, and tile that I was looking at. I played around with black or white tiles, how much in different patterns, and settled on a border. This was something I saw repeatedly in the images from the 1920s, something that sort of indicates a custom tile job rather than just standard modern out of a box. I actually did plan to do a white floor with green border at first, but almost half of the white tiles I ordered came in cracked, and I barely had enough of any of these tiles because there was no reason for me to order a third box when I only needed just over one box. Yes, I definitely could have contacted customer service and gotten that replaced, but I was also on a schedule, and the more I thought about it, the more I liked the opposite way. So with everything ordered and planned, the first step was to start tearing out all of the beige, get rid of the modern. With removing the towel bar, you can actually see the different paint layers, bright yellow, beige, light aqua, at the very least. I sanded and filled these to smooth out the trim and attempted to scrape the sticky foam from the light off the walls. Just small things to prep for the big day. Pulling out the sink, toilet, and tiles. Luckily, I found someone who was willing to do all of the demo and the tiling, linked to Randy's contact in the description, as well as all of the things that I ended up ordering for this project. And we scheduled the demo to happen just before the weekend, so I would have multiple days to get the space ready. The best discovery out of this seemed to be that there was a decent modern subfloor under the tiles, so we didn't have to completely rip everything up and worry about leveling out the floor. It was already good to go. With the walls exposed as of Friday evening, it was time to patch and paint. The pipes were unusually low on the wall, a problem I will revisit later, and very messy coming out of the plaster, so I did my best to get up close to the pipes and hopefully make the wall, which will be fully visible with the sink that I chose, less horrific. This was mostly just a lot of sanding. As that dried below, I started priming the rest of the room. Even though the upper portion will be papered, I think it's better to have a base that's similar in color to the final paper, and both the green and the black needed a tinted primer anyways. So first, everything is a dark gray prime, which was also the point where we could get in and aggressively start refinishing the woodwork. My mother did thankfully help me with this part. All of the baseboard and shoe molding had been pulled out, and we discovered then that the shoe molding in the back was literally falling apart. It was so rotted. It was not salvageable. The baseboard was at least okay. The window and door also had to happen before painting as well, since the last thing I wanted to do was tape over fresh paint to avoid messing it up with stain. Order of operations is absolutely the most annoying part of any type of project. But everything was scrubbed with Murphy's oil soap and very fine steel wool to get the grime off, because there was so much, before we stained and finished up with tung oil. That took up most of Saturday. Then I was able to come back the next day and get black, rather chaotically, all over the upper wall and trim, knowing the wall gets covered up and the trim will need a nice second coat near the end of the project anyway. The green on the ceiling and the bottom wall was a little more controlled in application, but without the baseboard in, it was way faster. I did manage to get everything ready for Monday and starting to tile, thankfully. Admittedly, I only got progress shots of this because fitting a camera and a whole human in that space at the same time just isn't happening. Filming myself was already a precarious positioning of the tripod on the stairs. But after a few days, the tile was laid in, grouted, and the bathroom was ready for reassembly. Baseboard slotted back in nicely, and we just skipped the shoe molding. It looks perfectly nice without it. Toilet was ordered and installed perfectly on time, but the sink was deeply back-ordered, as were some of the installation parts. This is where I got to learn to be a pretty terrible plumber, just to figure out what I needed to order, because none of these pipes are going to be covered up, therefore I need them in brass, not stainless steel, and it all needs to look nice. Well, nicer than whatever this mess is. Thankfully, the sink arrived a couple of weeks after the tile was done, and I was at least able to sort out what parts I would probably need. So it's like almost 10 o'clock at night, and the plumber comes tomorrow first thing in the morning, and I just realized this sink, this concrete attaches to the metal frame, and same thing with the tray down below. Not by way of like little screw parts that you've somehow misplaced, because there are holes that seem like they would go to that. No, it requires silicone caulking. Fortunately, I have that, because I've been doing a lot of windows and things like that. It's supposed to sit for 12 hours before it gets wet at all, so here's hoping I did it right and it will be set tomorrow. Technically the sink is supposed to get screwed into the wall too, but I'm afraid to do that until the plumber is like, yeah, I've got everything lined up and we're good to go and there's not a problem and we don't need to do weird things. Tomorrow is either going to go really, really well and this thing is going to be gorgeous and everything's going to be beautiful and brass, or I'm going to have gotten all of the wrong parts, none of it works, and I'm still not going to have a sink like a month after the other one was removed. I'm just waiting on all of that. I'm going to go to bed now. Spoilers, it's been a month since then, and I still don't have a working sink. Whee! I did order some of the right parts, but I also needed a second extension for the drain, water valves that screw on instead of what I got, the same valves just that screw on, and most importantly, the drain that came with my faucet cannot work with this sink style, which is really the only true problem. The sink I ordered has a matching drain and overflow that can be ordered in matching finish, but they've been out of stock for the entire 3 months I've spent on this project, and the projected in-stock date keeps getting pushed back. Ironically, I gave up and ordered the rest of the correct parts and a version of the drain without the overflow option. That happened over the weekend, 3 days ago. Guess what just came back in stock today? So now I've got even more drains. Huh. Being mildly technical for a second to understand this, most sinks have the overflow sort of built in with a gap in the basin, but this style does not. There's no bottom of the sink, as it were. So drains like this, which allow overflow in the sides from the sink itself, would just allow water to pour out in this style of sink. I didn't purchase this, like I said, it came with the faucet, but it is useless to me for that reason. But rather than end up on that very depressing note of things not being finished, I did go ahead and wallpaper, which might be the most exciting part. Thankfully, for such a small space, I only needed one roll, but the height was pretty much exactly the repeat, and very much not square, which did mean I attempted to chalk out lines, but had to give up as I went around corners and everything shifted a tiny amount. I did manage to wiggle the panels up enough to keep the ceiling line from dropping below the actual corner, but it's far from perfect, but I don't think that's possible here. You can see it sort of rises up and then back down again. I may go in later with an archival pen and touch up the seams where the white paper just barely shows, but for now, it's up. The rail trim has a second coat of paint, and it's just down to hardware. I got a few brass items like a shelf, towel bar, and toilet paper holder from Roan Iris that all felt vaguely vintage, a bit timeless, and then sorted out a fairly modern brass-trimmed mirror. I felt like the size and curved shape were more important than it feeling like an antique. Turns out, most bathroom mirrors, even antique ones, are larger than this wall could even fit. Something that's 2x3 is the entire wall on its side. So the last piece to mention, though it was actually the first piece that was installed, for obvious reasons, is the curtain. I wanted to pull a color from the wallpaper, since I couldn't do that for the rest of the room, and ended up with a yellow linen that has a small green stripe in it. It gives a really nice warm glow to the room as well. Thankfully, the window is well above street level, so I don't have to have it fully covered, which does help with the tiny space feel just a bit when you can see out of the room even with the door shut. And that's where it is today. Hopefully I'll be able to get the parts in and hook up the sink in the next couple of weeks, but in the meantime, it's a little jewel box of color and style that I get to see every time I come down the stairs or go through the entryway now, just to do that to the other 99% of my house. And that's not an exaggeration. This is literally less than 1% of the square footage in this house, which is terrifying, but it's still something. And of course, don't forget to keep that Art Deco style going by downloading June's Journey by way of my link or QR code.